One of the things, not getting off the subject, I want to share that I think is real key that I had to learn was this right here. You have to understand that it's your business. You're only going to get out of what you put into it. You know, some people think you pay yourself first. That's a good way to go out of business, paying yourself first before you take care of the business. If you take care of the business will take care of you.
Public Health Matters, Small Business Navigator Program, brought to you by the Illinois Public Health Association, with grant support from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Welcome to our series of podcasts on small business navigation, getting started with a small business or starting a not-for-profit corporation. On both topics today, our guest today is Lynard Joiner. Mr. Joiner, welcome to our program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For those who don't know, Mr. Joiner and I have known each other for over 20 years. We met on opposite sides of a federal courtroom, on opposite sides of the law. He was the defendant. I was the prosecutor. Mr. Joiner went to prison for 18 years, got out, and in essence had to start a new life. And as part of that, he did two things. He started a small business,
yes,
a restaurant business, and also started a not-for-profit organization called Shifting into New Gear, or SING for short. And the purpose of SING is to help people make the transition from prison after release successfully back into the community without recycling back. The business is the restaurant business.
Yes.
And you've had some ups and downs in that, haven't you?
Yes, a lot.
Well, Mr. Joiner, let's talk about first your business.
Okay.
Now, before you went to prison, you'd had a small, I won't call it a shop, a stand, before you went to prison. But then in prison, while you were in prison, you gained a skill.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, while I was in prison, I became a licensed catering gourmet chef that prepares several different dishes for the administrative staff while I was in prison.
Now, you became a certified chef.
Yes, that's correct.
So when you got out, you had a skill.
Yes.
But you didn't just start off being a chef.
No.
What was your first job after you got out of prison?
My first job when I got out of prison was I became what we call a line cook, where I cook like breakfast, short order, egg, and stuff like that, a short order cook.
Now, when you were in prison, how many people were you cooking for?
The most people I cooked for while I was in prison were like 4,500.
4,500 people.
That's
You're
correct.
A certified chef.
Yes.
And when you got out of prison, your first job was as a line cook, cooking eggs at a hotel.
Yes, which I felt was wow, but I couldn't find nothing else at the time.
You were probably by far the most qualified applicant for that job.
Yes, that's correct.
But what happened?
But because I had a prior felony on my record, so they start you at the bottom of the barrel. It wasn't about how much experience or credential that I had. It's just me being who I was, and they started me at the bottom. I had to work my way up.
But it didn't last long, did it?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, maybe a month at the most.
What happened?
Well, I was called into the office by the administrative staff, who told me, "Hey, Mr. Joiner, we noticed that you have a felony. Our policy doesn't allow us to hire felony." Well, I told them I put it on the application that I was a felony, and the lady told me it was okay, and I didn't think it was a problem. Well, Mr. Joiner, is a major problem because we doesn't have felony, like I told you, and so what we must do, we must terminate you immediately.
So you found yourself in a position where you had skills to deliver services at a high level.
Yes.
and yet you weren't able to find employment, an employer who would hire you to do that or to do much of anything else.
Much of anything.
And so at some point you decided to become your own employer.
Yes, that's correct.
To create your own opportunities. Now, there are people listening to this who will have gone to prison and got out, and they can probably identify with the story that you're telling here.
Yes.
And they need to learn from your experience of how to move forward. Most of the people listening here will not have gone to prison, but they still have the same sort of obstacles where they're having a difficult time making ends meet, getting a job that is one that pays enough and that has enough opportunities for increasing their salary over time, that they've decided, you know what, maybe I should start my own business. Now, that's a risky thing, isn't it?
Very risky.
Not everybody succeeds.
No.
So the purpose of this program is to give them a leg up, to give them an opportunity, as best an opportunity as we can, to find out what's involved with this so they can think it through. So why don't you share with us what you did to get yourself started? What type of business did you start, and how did that unfold? Because it's gone through stages.
Yes. First thing I did, I always wanted to be a chef, which I said I became a chef. So in order to start the business, first thing I did, created a business plan. How I would want the service to be, what service I would offer and everything. Then I had to go to the Secretary of State and register the business. I also had to register the business with the St. County Department of Public Health and all, because they have to come out and make sure that everything inspected is up to code and up to standard.
Because this was going to be a restaurant business,
yes,
a food service business.
Yeah, so that is very high. You have to get past the Department of Public Health, which is the real challenge. Because like I say, everything have to be up to code. What you think up to code might not be up to code to them.
Because there's both general standards for almost any business, but in many of them, there's local standards as well that you have to learn about and comply with, and you have to get permission or licensed or whatever it is so that you can operate many types of businesses. Now, you said the first thing you did was come up with a business plan.
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, the business plan is used to help keep you on track, but most of all, it's for finance purpose as well, because you might need finance assistance, and that's what they base off is your business plan.
So if you are going to start a business, it takes money to start a business.
Yes.
You're starting the business because you don't have money in lots of instances, so you need to be able to take out a loan.
Yes.
To take out a business loan, you need to have a good plan, because they're not going to give money to people who don't have a good business plan, something that convinces the bankers or the source of the financing that you have a plan, you have an idea that has a pretty good, reasonable chance of succeeding, that you've thought it through and worked out the details.
Exactly.
Now, most people have no idea, what's a business plan even look like? How do you get assistance in developing a business plan? What did you do?
Well, what I did, I went to the SBA. They help you to come up with a business plan. At the time when I was putting mine together, it was no charge. It was free for me, but there might be a fee, all depending on the timing of it. But for me, they helped me develop the plan. They walked me through. The most important part was the budget part of the plan, was the budget part. How much money I need, how the money going to be used. I'm talking about from zero to the amount that I wanted. For me, I won't discuss the amount. I wanted a large amount because I wanted to be like a top scale restaurant sometime. But with SBA, they would talk with me, be like, no, maybe we need to start here. So there is some resource and service out that will help you to outline and make your business plan be realistic.
Tell us about how you got in touch with them. Where are they located, and how did you work with them?
Well, how I got out to Lincoln Land Community College. I went out to Lincoln Land Community College. Someone had pointed me to go out to Lincoln Land College and told me SBA out at Lincoln Land College. You might want to talk to them. It was an individual that was at the restaurant I had went to get the job, and I worked for a few weeks. Somebody there told me about the SBA. That's how I learned. Network with other people is how you can get connected.
Okay, now, we're going to get into each one of these topics in subsequent episodes in more depth. So, but let's talk about that. You brought up networking.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about the importance of networking. I mean, networking, by that, what I mean is you're reaching out to people and you're letting them know that you are seeking information. You've got an idea, you want to do something, and people who find out about it start offering suggestions and resources.
Yes.
and all of that. If you try to do everything on your own, it's going to be tough.
Very tough.
But you're telling people, and you're seeking assistance, and you're looking around, and pretty soon people start providing suggestions that are helpful, and one step leads to somebody else helping you, and pretty soon you have a network, a support network. Am I right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Tell us how that happened with you.
Network, like I say, when I was working at this little restaurant, when I first got out, there was a couple of other chefs seen my talent. Said, man, you got talent, man. Man, you know, they got some grants and stuff, loan you can get to open up your own business. You might want to look at that, my man. So just reaching out, just talking with different co-workers, different people. And then when I went out to Lincoln Land, and talked with SBA, Lincoln Land also had a little cooking program there out at Lincoln Land Community College. So one of the ladies that came to the SBA was talking to the class, and she said, hey, Mrs. Joiner, you think maybe after class we could talk? Her name was Michelle. So she sort of guided me through, and she said, oh, you already got license and stuff? You already certified and everything? You can get some help. So that's how I got it, just working with people, just communicating, sharing my idea with people. But at the same time, you want to be careful with who you share your idea with as well, though, because some people take your idea and become their business. So I'm very cautious in who I share it with. But you have to work with somebody. You have to network with others as well. Okay,
so you here, part of your networking was also part of your education and preparation.
Yes.
You figured that if I go to Lincoln Land Community College and I take a class in the subject matter of whatever it is, in your case it was cooking, restaurant business, then the instructor and other people in the class are going to be good people to network with.
Yes.
And so that's two things, networking plus education. And the education is important, not only to gain the skill, but also in a class like that at Lincoln Land, they're going to be able to tell you the hoops you need to jump through, next steps, and put you in touch with the right people to get where you want to go.
Yes.
So a community college is really very valuable in this whole process.
Yes.
Now, one of the things when you're talking about a business plan, you and I were talking before we started recording here, where I said, in my observation, if you're going to get ahead, either in employment or particularly self-employment, you've got to be able to do one or the other of two things, or both. One, you've got to be willing to do something that other people are unwilling to do. Now, that's usually going to be doing the manual labor, the menial sorts of things, maybe the dirty work even. And you can get a job or you can start a business doing things that other people don't want to do. Now, that may be something like housekeeping, for example. Okay, other people, maybe they could, but they don't really want to, so they'll hire somebody to do housekeeping for them. And somebody could start a housekeeping service or a janitorial service, something of that sort. Now, once you get to janitorial service, now that's a skill level sort of thing. There's a lot of technical things as far as that, just using that as an example, where now you have to gain skills so you can do something that other people can't do. And the more skills you gain, and that means education, training, vocational education or professional education, the more that you can get, the more training you can get, the more skills that you can get, the more you can develop or fill a market, a need. Again, you either have to be willing to do something people don't want to do, or you can do something at a high level that people can't do for themselves. Now, you did both, because people go to a restaurant or a food service because they don't want to cook. Maybe it's just tonight, I don't want to cook.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you're delivering food that tastes pretty good.
Thank
Better
you.
what they're going to make at home.
Yes.
So you're doing both, something that
Yes.
they don't want to do, but also something they can't do for themselves. Now, that's the beginning of a good business plan. So you've got an opportunity. But you're networking, you're getting the education, you're doing a lot of work laying the foundation before you ever open the doors for a business.
Yes. Well, you make $1. You have to lay the foundation before you even make $1.
So all this went into developing a good business plan. And you needed the business plan before you could get the money to start a business.
Yes.
Because you don't have the money in your pocket, you need to borrow the money.
Exactly.
And nobody's going to loan you the money unless they think you got a pretty good chance, you're credible, you got a good plan, they think they're going to get that money back.
Yes.
All right, so how did things unfold after that?
Well, once I got the business plan and went registered business and everything, I had to have a bank account. I had to go get a bank account because they wanted to know where would this money be being kept at, the bank account. So I had to open up a business bank account. Let me say that. It had to be a business bank account, which required to be separate from my personal bank account.
Okay, now that's important.
Yes.
Because you're keeping your business money, your income and expenses separate from your personal money, your
Yes.
income and expenses.
Yes.
Why is it important to keep those separate?
Well, first of all, it keep the IRS off your back. That's the main reason. Because you have to file your personal taxes as well as your business taxes. You have to keep the two separate. Because if you keep them together, now you're struggling when it's tax time. Oh, what's go where? Do this go with this or go with my personal? So it's best to set up two different accounts, one for your person, one for your business.
Now, you mentioned the IRS.
Yes.
Okay. Before you can even get started, there's some things that you need to make arrangements with the state
Yes.
and with the federal government, with both.
Mm-hmm.
What did you have to do? Let's start with the state. Before you start a business, you've got to register. Well, you don't have to, but most people do. You
Yeah,
could,
best.
yeah, you could start a business just as a sole proprietorship
Mm-hmm.
and not incorporate. But most people will incorporate in some way. It could be a limited liability corporation, an LLC, which is pretty common. There are other forms, which we won't go into all the details of that here. But it's fairly common for people to go down to the Secretary of State's office and register as what's called an LLC, a limited liability corporation.
Yes.
Now, this is the lawyer in me, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I just went through this myself, as a matter of fact. I started
Okay.
my own
Good.
small
That's good.
business, Risley Media Productions, all right? That's kind of what we're doing right here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I know what the process is, and it's a fairly simple form that you fill out and you
Yeah.
pay a fee. Why do you do this to establish a business entity as an LLC? Well, because if the business is you and you get sued for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
there's some sort of accident or injury or something happens, there are all sorts of reasons you might get
Yes.
sued. If you're the business, then it's your pocketbook that the lawyers are going after. On the other hand, if the business is a limited liability corporation, that's what the LL stands for.
Mm-hmm.
They go after the assets of the business,
Business, correct.
not your personal business. So you keep them separate,
That's why.
both for accounting and tax purposes, but also for legal purposes, for
Yes.
liability. Now,
Yes.
again, these are subjects that people will help you work through, the advisors that you end up meeting and talking to.
Yes.
But they're things that we want people who are listening to know about and keep in mind right up front. But it's an easy process to establish yourself. And you get an employee identification number from the IRS, an EIN.
Mm-hmm.
And that's easy to do.
Yes.
You can even get it back the same day.
Exactly.
And you say, well, I'm the only employee. Why do I need to do this? Well, because that's going to be your taxpayer identification number for business purposes,
Yes.
even if there's only one of you.
Yes.
And so you do that. Okay, so now and then you got licensing.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay, so now there may be licensing in a lot of different businesses that you get started in of one sort of another. And it's important to find out what those requirements are from the state and sometimes federal.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about your business, the food service or restaurant business. What kind of licenses did you need?
Well, first of all, I had to go through the state. I had to go through the state and become licensed through the state in order to serve food. Also, which required me to have insurance. As part of the license, you have to have insurance too. Basically what you said, like say somebody come to my restaurant and they get sick. Say they get sick, food poisoning, whatever may be the case. Because I have the insurance, I have the license to provide this service, I'm protected under that. They would get it from my insurance company instead of suing me. So basically what you were saying earlier is that the way you set up your restaurant from a legal point is very key, very key. You talk about liability, but some people put it on sole proprietorship where they use their Social Security number. I don't recommend that. Because sometimes it gets shuffled into the wind. That can be put out there real quick. People have ways that they can get your Social Security number.
Identity theft.
Yes. So I don't recommend that. But if you have to start off like that, it's okay, but don't remain like that.
Okay, so now you've mentioned another thing besides structuring the business in a way that protects you from limits the exposure to liability.
Yes.
But you also mentioned insurance.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, like with Power Kitchen, when I opened up the restaurant, we had to get insurance in case somebody break in or fire or whatever the case may be, because there are some things unseen. What if things happen out here? So that's another reason that the insurance is important. For your employee you have to have insurance for your employee as well. So it's a lot that go into this. I can speak for myself. Like, even though I was getting workers sent to me, I still had to have a certain amount of insurance to cover them while they in the building. In case they get burnt, they cut their hand with the knife or something like that. Also, another license I had to have was safety management license. A safety management license is when you're in a restaurant, you have to train everybody the proper way handling the equipment. Even for as washing dishes, you have to know the proper standing of washing your dishes. Health department, you have to get certified through the health department. One of the bigger issues that most people struggle with in the health department is the proper way to wash dishes. The reason I want to stress on this is key. The proper way to wash the dishes is wash, rinse, sanitize. A lot of us don't understand the sanitize. Most of us at home just put them in, wash it with soap and water and put them in. No, it's the proper way. You have to let them air dry. It's a lot to go with it. So those license and stuff you have to have.
Now, once you get established and you get procedures, then things run pretty much automatically as long as your employees are following your directions to do it right.
Yes.
But getting up to that speed required you to go through training.
Yes.
And you had people that were assisting you as far as the business plan. You had people that were assisting you as far as getting licensed and knowing what to do, where to go to get things. And so one of the messages that we want to convey to people is if you're starting a small business, particularly if you're just getting started out, it might seem overwhelming. The important thing is that there's help.
Yes.
There are people out there who can assist. The Springfield Chamber of Commerce can assist. There are there are other people going out to Lincoln Land. Sounds to me like a really good move on your part.
Yes.
Because there are people who'll be instructing in classes who will know the things that you need to know and know the people that you need to meet before you can get where you want to go. Now, you also introduced yet another dimension to this, and you talked about a building, because you started a restaurant here in town and you rented some restaurant space at first. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Tell us about that.
Well, we rented a space over here on Cook Street. I won't give the address, but we rented a space on Cook Street. And it started off real well. Everything, the grand open went well, everything. But there was an unseen thing that took place during the wintertime. The pipe froze and busted. So now, because we were renting it, we felt that the insurance was on the people we were renting the place for. But they felt it was our responsibility as well. So when it happened, he come telling them, hey, y'all going to pay to get this fixed? With me having very limited ability and talking with the SBA and a few other people, I had a little knowledge of it that, hey, you renting this, you're not buying it. They are responsible for that. So that's another thing. Know and understanding when you're renting a restaurant or space or any type of space, know your right and know what is in the contract. Make sure you read the contract. That's one of the things you really want to do. Understand what is in that contract. So when we tried to get him to fix it, he told us it was on us. I said, no, it's on you. So we couldn't come to an agreement. So he said, well, okay, I'll talk with my lawyer and let's see what he think of it. But in the process and waiting on him to talk to his lawyer, another problem came about. The building, a vehicle ran up into the building on top of it. So,
I read about that in the paper.
Yes, it was in the paper. So at this time, but come and find out, while we were waiting to hear from them, there's another thing you want to be mindful of. While we were waiting on them to give us a decision on who we're responsible for, he sold it to somebody else. Now, that was in the contract. I take full responsibility for that because I should have read that properly and understood that he could sell it at any time. Even though I was renting it, if he wanted to sell it straight out, he can do that. So there's a lot to go with the contract part of it. You talk about legal part. These are some of the legal issues that you run into, the unseen stuff. Thing happen. Fire extinguisher, place catch on fire. People come by and burn your place down. All of that, you have to be prepared for the unseen as well. So one of the things, not getting off the subject, I want to share that I think is real key that I had to learn was this right here. You have to understand that it's your business. You're only going to get out of what you put into it. The first couple years of me doing business, didn't make a dime. So if you think you're going to walk right into a business and go making money, it don't work like that. Because the money you invest in, that money have to be paid back. Especially you got a loan, you got to pay that. Your inventory, all that stuff, all that money have to be paid back before you see a profit.
You get paid last.
Yes. Yeah. Some people think you pay yourself first. That's a good way to go out of business, paying yourself first before you take care of the business. If you take care of the business will take care of you.
Well, so you had some really one setback after another setback.
Yes.
And so you ended up, without going into all the details, you lost the restaurant location.
Yes.
But you're the business. You still have the skills
Yes.
and all of that. So
Yes.
What did you do to get back on your feet, to recover from all this?
Well, after that, and we came to some agreement that it was on him. We finally came to that agreement that it was on him, but we decided it would be best to depart ways since I found out that he wasn't being straightforward with us. And also, like I say, I take responsibility. I should have read the contract a little more of the fine print. I should have read it a little more careful. But so make a long story short, I decided to downgrade, as we call it. I went purchasing a food trailer, which I run now, a food trailer, which is doing okay.
Now, I would call that downsizing, not downgrading,
Well,
because you're still, it's not a full restaurant service where people can come in and order things and sit down, although you had limited seating, but still, you had a restaurant setup with the kitchen and everything else. And now your facilities are not as elaborate, but you're still providing good food.
yes,
And people come and they don't feel like cooking, so they come to you and they like your food. So you still have your business plan, but your location is shifted and the scale of the operation has been downsized.
yes.
And have you survived?
Yes. Also, with that being said, that's a good thing you brought up too. Downside would be a better word. One of the things that having this food trailer is that the business better. What I mean by business better, because now I do catering service. We do catering. We catering wedding, party, any type of event we cater in. Just here recently, we did the Obama breakfast here. We have catering a lot of event here in Springfield recently. We have like 5 on the list now to do in the next couple of months. But the food quantity is still the same, much better. We serve lots of great food. We also do giveaway. What we mean by giveaway, we give back to the community. We give back to the community for people who are faithful customers and just giving to the community. And we also do training too. I offer free training to individuals who want to get into the business as well.
Okay, now being a good citizen and a good member of the community is also good business, isn't it?
Yes, it
Now,
pays off.
It's the right thing to do in its own right, even if it wasn't good business. But as it turns out, it's good for business.
Yes,
Get involved. Make a contribution.
yes,
Don't always be asking, what's in it for me?
right.
And lo and behold, people now want to do business with you
Yes,
because they like you, they respect you, and they like your food.
and it open opportunity for you. Believe me, you like right now, like I feed the homeless. Right? But guess what? In return, guess what? I get a lot of business based on me feeding the homeless.
So now you've got a different business plan now.
Yes.
Now this reminds me, there used to be a tailor who he opened a tailor shop in downtown Springfield. And so he had a fixed location and people would come to the tailor shop. And eventually he ended up, because of the high overhead, coming up with a new business plan, untraditional. And so what he came up with was the plan. This is Steel Tailors. He goes to people in their offices to measure them for suits and will custom tailor suits to them, and they never have to leave their office or their home. You can go to his home, but he works out of his home. He doesn't have the overhead of the shop. He can deduct a lot of the expenses for having that at his home as business expenses. But he travels around and has made a good business with a different plan than what he started off with. One where he, instead of having a fixed location, he became more mobile. Now, that's essentially what you did. You started off with one plan.
Yes.
You ran into some obstacles, but you didn't give up.
No.
You developed a new plan, and it's working. Now, that's good business.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Joiner.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an honor and a privilege having you with us.
Same here. Thank you.
Welcome back to our program. Right now, this is a few days later after we recorded the conversation with Lynard Joiner. And joining me now is Lisa Clemens-Stott, who is a business consultant who is working with the Illinois Public Health Association on this Small Business Navigator program. And Lisa, you've reviewed the recording of the conversation I had with Lynard Joiner about him starting his business and the challenges he faced and the steps that he took, both to get launched and then to deal with hurdles along the way. Would really enjoy hearing your comments about that, your reaction to that. So kind of like a post-game show, if this were a sports, if that had been a sports event or something like that, why don't you give us your reaction?
Well, first of all, I felt like Lynard's story is pretty universal. There are definitely some parts of it that are uniquely his, but pretty much every small business owner can experience some levels of tragedy with their business. They definitely know how difficult it is to run a small business. And you know, one of the things too was that when he was helped, he referred to it as the SBA, but it was actually the Illinois SBDC. And so it really hit home to me that people who have a passion to start a small business, they're not going to be fluent in all the acronyms that, you know, people like me traffic in all the time. You know, they're not going to remember everything. He knew it was a small business organization that was funded through state or federal dollars. And
so tell us again what the acronym should have been, not SBA, but...
Right. It's the Illinois Small Business Development Centers.
Okay, tell us about them.
So they provide free services to people who want to start a business or who have been in business for a little bit and need some extra assistance. And it's all free, and they're located all around Illinois, all throughout the state. It's a partnership between the federal government and the state government. They're through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity.
Which is an Illinois state agency.
Correct.
In fact, this program is funded by the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity.
And you can say that they were the original navigators. They've always been there. They've been there for decades, and they are always there to help a small business owner. They do a lot of work in business planning, financial planning, connecting people with lenders, things like that. And so they're part of our Navigator hub as well, and they're definitely kind of a first line of defense when we meet someone who is struggling to get their business up and going.
They used to be located or have a presence out at Lincoln Land Community College, which was when Mr. Joiner went out there and met with them. Now they've relocated, is that right?
Yes, they are no longer affiliated with Lincoln Land, but they are still active in the Springfield and Central Illinois area. So now they're called the Illinois SBDC for Central Illinois, and they're still located in Springfield.
All right, so what are some of the things that you observed that Mr. Joiner did right, other than connecting up with them?
Oh, I mean, Lynard just has a natural ability to make the type of connections that you need to be successful, you know, obviously both on the business side and the nonprofit side. So I think if anything, for people, it's not so much that they're not skilled at certain things, is that they don't know what they don't know. And so I think as along his journey, he did a very good job of continuing to reach out and learn and take the next step and listen along the way as he went to different experts, taken what they said, and then put it into practice, like move to the next step. He didn't know A to Z how to open his business. Hardly anyone does, but he listened to every single person along the way that he came in contact with about what his next step was. And you kind of do have to have a big community around you when you start a business venture. Not only do you want them to maybe shop from you or buy your food or tell other people about you, but they also have other connections that will be very important. And, you know, you covered financing with him. Financing is always the biggest barrier to small business ownership. So that really takes a village.
You know, I've known Lynard Joiner now for several years after he got out of prison. I knew the Lynard Joiner back when I was the prosecutor in the case for which he went to prison. Let me tell you, those are almost like two different people in some ways.
Really?
It was quite a journey that he's taken. He even wrote a book about
I have that book, actually.
Yeah. And if you read that book, that's the old Lynard Joiner.
Okay.
It's kind of biographical. He remade himself, even in the environment of prison, which is not exactly conducive to positive life change. So I really admire him for that. But if he can do that in that sort of environment, one of the messages I get from his story is that people who face substantially less adverse circumstances, even though they may be adverse, and they don't know where to start, Lynard Joiner is a great example of how if you have the will, there's a way. But he didn't do it alone. And you're right, he has this aptitude for figuring out, okay, how am I going to get from point A to point B? He doesn't just say, I could never do it. He says, how am I going to do it? What do I need? Who do I need to get to know? Who can help me? And he's opened all that. His real story, seems to me, is this story of education, self-education, transformation, willingness to change, openness to new ideas, and resilience, both an emotional resilience and fortitude that helped him to deal with all of these adversities that he ran into.
He really is the master of the pivot. I mean, in the big sense of turning his life around post-prison, but also, the stories he told about the truck goes into his business and then he loses that location and then he sets up in a downsized way. Like he just keeps going and morphing. And any small business owner needs to do that. You need to adjust with the times. The day you opened up is not the same as the year later, and it's definitely not the same as 5 years later. And we know that most small businesses fail within the first 5 years. So being able to be resilient like he is and being able to move forward no matter what happens. I mean, I'm sure there were days when there was crying and staying home and staying on the couch. But after that, you have to get back up and get out there if you're going to be a successful small business owner.
Well, that's what he did. And look where he is now and look where he's going. Speaking of which, what do you see as things that may be on his horizon that you would suggest that somebody in his position be thinking about or looking at? Any thoughts there? Well,
so from a business perspective, I mean, he is looking at different opportunities, and a lot of them are tied to funding. So there was a city funding opportunity, and so he looked at how he could pivot his business in order to meet that need. He just keeps moving through the idea of brick and mortar again, where would be the best location. He's done a lot of analysis of a lot of locations in Springfield in an area that not only would help his own business, but also help his community as well. You talked a lot with him about, being a business owner that also gives back and is really community minded. So he, using also the loan that he obtained recently, he's been able to grow and come out of the pandemic a little bit stronger. I mean, there was some devastating things that happened even before the pandemic to his business. So I think that he's just really trying to position himself to come out stronger. He knows he has a great product. He knows he has great customer service. So that elusive funding part to be able to grow, that's what he's been going after.
I hope people aren't intimidated by the fact that most small businesses, a large percentage of them, fail within 5 years. They don't have to fail if they're willing to change, to adapt, to change their plan, and to keep moving forward, because there are opportunities.
Well, and the other part of it is really reaching out and learning what are the ground rules to make your business the most successful. And Lynard talked a lot about that with you, having that business plan. That business plan is what banks need to see. A lot of businesses feel like they don't want to take out a loan for their business, but to be a successful business, you often have to do that. Maybe you can raise some money from friends and family, but having a bank in your corner it does set you up for success. So that, separating out your accounts, making sure that your personal spending is separated from your business spending. That's important come tax time. That's important at any time when you're talking about your business. So there's some foundational things that I think he really, having gone through the Illinois SBDC experience and doing some other things at Lincoln Land Community College, he was able to, also have that foundation and then add the resiliency onto that and his ability to pivot. And that's why he's still coming through the way he is.
Well, thank you for this commentary. I'll tell you, I think Mr. Joiner will appreciate the affirmation that he's doing a lot of things right. And I think the people who are listening will appreciate the affirmation that if they're willing to give it a try, there is a path forward for them. There's help to help them to know what it is that's viable, what might work, what might not, in developing a business plan that's going to work, not only as a business, but also for getting the financing that's needed to get it off the ground. And all of that is important to people who are our target audience here, which is you, those of you who are watching. One of the things that we're going to do is to have a series of episodes on special topics that have been talked about here, including one that you mentioned here, financing. So we're going to bring in a banker, somebody who has gone through the process as a small business owner of working with the bankers and developing all of the things that are needed, jumping through all the hoops necessary to get the assistance from a financial institution, but also other resources that may be available to help, even grants to help people get started with a small business. There are a lot of resources to help you succeed. People want you to succeed. You're not alone. That's a message we want to convey. So thank you, Lisa, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Public Health Matters, Small Business Navigator Program, brought to you by the Illinois Public Health Association, with grant support from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity.